I have been waiting for weeks to talk about this matchup. It is time for our second favorite Week 17 game. Let's get it. Welcome to Summer School, Club Fantasy's best ball podcast streaming exclusively on YouTube. I am your host, Austin Amandolia, and here with me, as always, is my co-host, Matt Record. This is our second to last CRAM session of 2024, focusing on a single Week 17 matchup. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Go back, check out every single one of these that we've done, and make sure you have those notifications on so you can see when our top-ranked game comes out tomorrow. We're discussing our second favorite game, the Arizona Cardinals versus the Los Angeles Rams. Some basic stats and betting lines. It's a 48.0 over under. That ranks second out of all 16 matchups. Arizona are 6-point underdogs, which is kind of wild. I think can we just go ahead and take the points for them?
You probably should.
I think it's going to be closer. I like this offense. It's fun. Their combined Week 15 and 16 total is 184, which ranks fifth out of the 16 Week 17 matchups. The ADP of the first player off the board is the 110 in Puka Nacua. This is an indoor dome game at SoFi Stadium, and we gave it a ranking of 7.3 out of 10. Matt, tell me, how does this matchup go well for fantasy football?
Yeah, so obviously we're talking about Week 17, but we're hoping in this game that the Rams, have yet to figure out the loss of Aaron Donald on defense. We lose that wrecker on the defense on the Rams, but like these two offenses, are primed for, a lot of good things this year. So, if the Rams defense is not elite, the Cardinals defense, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the Cardinals they're relying on their offense this year, right? So it's a fun team to buy into from a fantasy perspective. So if the Rams defense isn't great and let the Cardinals cook, we fully expect the Rams to be in it. So they're playing to win something. Stafford, is healthy the entire year. Puka's healthy the entire year. Cooper Kupp's healthy the entire year. I think this should be a fun little back and forth matchup. And, inside, we don't have to worry about weather at all. Like, I think there's a lot of ways this game can go well, which is probably why it's second.
Yeah, I'm very, very big fan of this game. I think there are so many pathways for it to pop off. Especially, I like the idea of like, what happens if Arizona gets up early? Like they score 2 quick touchdowns, something wild, and then Matthew Stafford's having to slug the ball 40, 50 times to Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and one of their hodgepodge of tight ends. And it just ends up becoming this deal where the script is flipped and it's a shootout, but not the way you thought it was going to be. Like if Kyler's healthy, if Stafford's healthy, this game could go to the moon. Also, this is relying on Marvin Harrison being the prospect that we all think he is, which I buy. So I feel great about this matchup, but there's got to be some way that this matchup goes poorly. Every year we're like, oh, these teams are supposed to be great to some NFL team and ends up not panning out. So Matt, tell the story. How does this matchup go poorly?
Yeah, like most of these matchups, for me, it's dependent on the quarterbacks. Kyler Murray's been hurt before, so he's an undersized quarterback. Like he can get hurt again. And even if he doesn't get hurt on the Cardinals side, maybe Marvin Harrison doesn't pan out, right? So like there's a lot of things that could not go well, or maybe even James Conner gets hurt. Like I don't know, like there's a lot of ways the Arizona Cardinals offense isn't what we expect it to be. Then Matthew Stafford, he's no spring chicken like we expect him. We expect him to play through a lot of injuries. Like he's kind of like, to me, the new Ben Roethlisberger, where it like doesn't matter what the injury is, he's going to be playing. But like maybe he suffers something that's too much, right? Maybe it's too much. And Cooper Kupp is getting up there in age. Maybe he gets hurt. Puka has already been sidelined with a seemingly minor injury. Should not, impact the regular season. But, injuries sort of rack up. So the fact that it's indoors, I'm not worried about weather, obviously. But, like, there's a world where the quarterbacks are hurt, the big playmakers are hurt. Maybe the Cardinals are already out of it. Maybe the Rams are already out of it, and no one's actually trying. So while there's many ways this matchup can go well, if all the dominoes fall I think in the injury category specifically, things could be not as great as we want them to be.
Yeah, I think that's really accurate. Like if Matthew Stafford's elbow gives out, it's going to be rough. But I'm going to take this a little bit of a different direction. I think the way that this matchup goes poorly is just if you miss on the stacks and the correlations you need for whatever the game script ends up being. We're making decisions in August about a game that's going to happen in December, January, or in January by the time we're at week 17. Anyways, not the point. So it's hard to know what the game script is going to be. It could be Kyron Williams gets the ball 30 times and Kyler is having to slug the ball, and you decided, oh, I was in on Puka Nakua and Cooper Cup this year, and you just miss out because it was a Kyron Williams game. It was that week. I think that's why I've been targeting this matchup. I've targeted it a few times because I think it's a really great one for our week 17 upside. And I'm doing it slightly differently every time because we can't predict right now what the exact game script is going to be. Even the week up, we won't really know. So it's good to have different types of exposures to this game. But what are your favorite stacks and correlations for this matchup? Speaking of those, many ways to stack this matchup.
Many ways. And I'm going to take the Rams pathway here. So I forget exactly which game we were talking about. It might have been the Packers. But the ADP for the Rams wide receivers, Puka Nakua is going off the board at wide receiver 8. Awesome. Like great year last year. Like a lot of things to be excited about. Cooper Cup going off the board as wide receiver 18, which in your standard 12-team leagues, that's a mid wide receiver 2. And Matthew Stafford supposedly going to support these two, and he's all the way at QB 19. It's like, how does that make sense? Like if you're drafting two, top 2 fantasy wide receivers, not even just top 2, like top 1.5 wide receivers, why are you all the way at QB 19? So what I love doing early in drafts, if I can get myself a Puka, I find myself liking Cooper Cup more at that ADP than Puka at wide receiver 8. Like, personally, I want to see him earn it. But I think they're going to be top 220 wide receivers. I love grabbing one of those two and then grabbing Matthew Stafford, later on as your QB2, QB3. Like it's a nice little tasty stack that doesn't cost you a whole lot because you're probably drafting those wide receivers, where they should be drafted anyway. And you just happen to fall into that stack with Matthew Stafford later and not having to invest too much, draft asset for him. Like it seems like a pretty easy win for me.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a little bit on the other side of this. I love just taking all of the early guys in this matchup. It's like it's possible to get Puka Nakua, Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride, and Kyler Murray. It's hard. You got to be lucky, but it's possible. And I love that matchup. But what I love most about this is all of the late round receivers there are on both sides of the ball. So you're talking about getting Matthew Stafford late. Funny enough, my highest exposure on DraftKings right now is Matthew Stafford and wait for it, Demarcus Robinson, their wide receiver 3, who I freaking love to take in drafts late. He's basically free. And then also on the Cardinals side, there's so many late guys that are great to take. There's Michael Harris, there's Greg Dortch, there's Zay Jones, all 3 guys that I think could have weeks where they pop, where they get in the end zone, and they are adding points to your best ball lineup, and that's going to be worth it. Speaking of plenty of value to go around, Matt, who's your best value at ADP in this matchup?
I mean, probably Matthew Stafford at QB 19, but for the sake of putting something else out there, I'm going to go to James Conner at running back 20. All James Conner does is produce when he's healthy. Look, I know he's been hurt a lot, right? But at the RB20 spot, like you're asking him to be your RB2, presumably. You're not going to draft him as your RB1. And for the weeks that he's healthy, he flashes RB1 upside. So I really like grabbing him as my typically RB3. I've been noted in this show as like I go pretty heavy running backs because I think the cliff is there. He's probably on the verge of the RB dead zone, if not on the RB dead zone. But like grabbing him as your RB3 so that you can have him for the I don't know, half of the weeks that he's healthy, posting RB1 numbers. Like that's really helpful for your best ball lineup. So I think when I'm around that RB20 or so range, and James Conner is there, I love smashing that draft button.
Yeah, I love it. For me, it is Michael Wilson. I already mentioned him once. He is wide receiver 70 off the board, a 160 ADP. So he's down in like the 16th round. I think he's just a good player, and he's a good fantasy player. He was a DFS darling last year. He was always a super cheap receiver that you could squeeze into your lineup. He was cash viable, which for best ball is nice to know that someone's going to have a safe floor, but he also popped in tournaments. Like he had some really good spike weeks. So I'm a big fan of Michael Wilson late in drafts. But on the flip side, we got to talk about the trap players. Matt, who is your biggest trap player in this matchup?
Yeah, this one obviously might bite me, but like I don't love Marvin Harrison Jr. going off the board as a top 10 wide receiver. Like
Yeah.
he's a rookie. Obviously, he has the traits and comes in with the pedigree that we expect him to be a top guy eventually. But like drafting him as a top 10 guy right out the gate without him playing a snap in the NFL is a bit of a trap for me. I like the more established guys. And of course, he might just light the world on fire. And this sounds silly, but like I'd rather go for a safer guy than him if you're going for your wide receiver one.
Yeah, I think that's fair, honestly. Every time I smash the draft button on him, I'm a little nervous. I'll admit it. Like I'm doing it to make sure that if he pops off, I have exposure to him. And I do think he's a great player, but it doesn't always feel great because you're right. We haven't seen him. We haven't seen him in this offense. We haven't seen him in the NFL. I think he's going to be great, but we have seen rookies like get off to a slow start, and that could actually tank your lineup depending on the opponents you have in your draft room. I'm going to go for both backup running backs on between these two teams, between Trey Benson for the Arizona Cardinals and our boy Blake Corum for the Los Angeles Rams. I don't love it. They're going off the board as running back 35 for Benson and running back 37 for Corum. And I don't think that they're going to be utilized that heavily. I don't think either of these offenses have really shown like, oh yeah, we use a committee. We use different guys all throughout the time. They usually rely on one guy. I think Trey Benson is going to get some snaps because I think James Conner has never played a full 17 game season in his life, and that's going to continue this year. I think there's a good chance that Blake Corum gets some stacks because Kyron Williams hasn't played a full season in his life either. So there's a good chance that they're playing, but I would rather take those guys after the RB40, RB50 range. If I'm thinking I'm going to get 3 to 4 games where they're starting out of them. I don't love getting them in the same breath as getting guys like, first off, Ezekiel Elliott going after both of these guys. He seems to have the starting role. Jerome Ford going after both of these guys. He's going to be the starter. Austin Eckler going after both of these guys. Even Zach Charbonnet. And Seattle's more of a 50-50 split. I would rather have him over these guys. There's a lot that I get interested in. Now, once you get to the Marshawn Lloyd, the Tyler Algier, Julio McLaughlin tier, that's where I'm like, yeah, this is where I want to be drafting Blake Corum and Trey Benson, but they just aren't falling that far. So, last question. What is your biggest question mark about these teams?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose what Kyler are we getting? Like for me on the Cardinals, because when Kyler Murray is fully healthy, and there's plenty of stats on fantasy Twitter to back this up. When he's healthy, he's an elite fantasy asset. Slinging it to everyone. You'd feel if Kyler Murray is fully healthy, you feel great about McBride. You feel great about Marvin Harrison. You feel great about that entire offense, right? But is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be the guy we expect him to be? And can he hold up the entire season? So by the time he gets to week 17, like, will he still be there and still be the guy slinging the ball? So for me, that's my biggest question mark for these teams.
Yeah, I love that. My biggest question mark is a player take, and it's about Trey McBride. The question is he legit? And I think there's a good chance he is, but I want to see it with Marvin Harrison in this offense, because I do worry, as much as I'd love taking him early and stacking him with Kyler, because it's a fun way to draft these. I do worry that he was the benefactor of there being no true number one in this offense last year.
No one else there. Yeah.
There was just no one else. And now that there is another one, I do worry about that having a negative impact on his value. I'm still drafting him and I'm pulling for him. Like, I hope we do see, because it's great to have fun tight ends and he looked fantastic. But I definitely, that is why I've not drafted him every time. I will say that, because I'm hedging my bets on where that might go. Some other teams to target if you're going after this game. Arizona plays the New England Patriots in week 15, which is a little bit rough because that's a pretty tough defense. But they get the Carolina Panthers in week 16, which is a garbage defense. So that's incredible. The Los Angeles Rams, they have the reverse problem. They play the San Francisco 49ers in week 15, which they're a good defense, but they can be had. They do play the New York Jets, though, in week 16. They are a little bit harder to get. So I definitely appreciate the Arizona playoff schedule more than I do the Rams side, but I love this week 17 matchup. So I'm going to be going after these teams pretty heavily. So that is going to be all for this week. Before you go, don't forget to hit subscribe, turn on those notifications. Look out for our next episode where we have made it finally to our favorite episode. And for Matt Record, I'm Austin Amandolia. This has been Summer School. Until next time, remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football, and best ball wins money. We'll see you next time.